When profit first isn't enough, the debt that will sink your business. The saying goes, no point flogging a dead horse. And this is so true with your business. If we're not growing, you're not growing. This podcast episode is for business owners who have done all the hard work, have implemented the systems to address the overspending, they've improved what was needed on the revenue side of things, and they've improved their systems and made it more efficient. Your business is great, except for the fact that you've got one big problem, and that is you're a business that's still buried in debt and you're losing sleep and you're fighting a debt battle that is beyond you. It's beyond you being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And the harsh truth is, no matter how good you are now or in the past or in the future, the reality is that the past is continuing to haunt you. The reality is it's beyond knowing how much debt you have. You might not realize that whilst you got this huge amount owing in your company and you can't get to a position where you can pay it off, the bigger problem as well is that you can't pay down that debt, but also in saying that, in getting to that position where you owed all that money, you probably did it whilst you were trading while insolvent and breaching your director's duties. So it's a big problem, and it's one that business owners need to face if they want to continue being in business and they want to continue growing. So today's podcast, it's all a wake-up call. And today, I want to give you guys just a practical guide that if you're in this position where you're doing the profit first, but you've got so much debt that it's just beyond you and you need something else to get through it. Hey guys, I'm Nathan Rigney, also known as the Profit Generator, and I'm a certified Profit First professional. I'm the Profit First Professional of 2024, and I'm a CPA and owner of NGO Accounting. Guys, I help business owners take control of their cash flow. I help them show them a business that they love. I help them find the profit that they lost in their business, and I stop this feast and famine cycle. So guys, this podcast today is, I think, one of the most important ones I've done so far. So listen up. Profit First, I think, is one of the most powerful tools I've seen in my whole accounting career. But you know what? Even the best system can't save a sinking ship. The reality is, if you're underwater already, it's going to be really hard to get it back up to where it needs to be. So today is all about getting back to basics. I want to educate you guys on what you can do next when you can't pay down the debts in your company. I want to talk about where you have amounts so big in your business that it's unlikely that you're ever going to be able to get to the point where you are debt-free and you can get rid of those liabilities. The reality is your business cannot grow and it cannot be profitable when you are surrounded by debt and all you're doing is repaying, and the reality is the debt you have is so unachievable that even with great systems like Profit First in place, that you're just not going to be able to achieve to get to a position where it's paid off even after making those massive changes to improve your finance. So I'm talking about debts to the ATO or maybe employee super, including your own super as an owner of a business. I'm talking about credit card debt. I'm talking about bank overdrafts. I'm talking about creditors that you owe money to, and you just can't get on top of repaying everyone you owe money to. Recently, I've been working with a client where we've identified that Profit First will help them, but the foundations of the business are so shaky with debt that even implementing Profit First is going to be hard with even all the best intentions to get it back to a position where the business can start growing. And if I had to paint a picture, I would say this client has a really good business, but they're just a little bit lost along the path of being a business owner. The client has a retail business. Essentially, they're overstocked. They have a bank overdraft that keeps growing year after year, and the bank overdraft represents a quarter of their yearly sales. They have unpaid super for just not themselves, but also their employees. When it comes to bad time, they need to get a payment arrangement because they can't pay it on time. They can't pay it in full on time. And a company tax that comes around every year, and they don't have any money for that. They were always on the edge of fearing the next phone call from someone demanding money, whether that's a creditor, supplier, or even worse, family and friends begging for their money back. The reality is, the discussion that I had with my client is, I said that something needs to change. And the advice I shared with these clients is that they have two options. They face the reality of what's going on, and we work out a solution, and then we move on. Or the second option is we ignore it until you have absolutely no choices, and then you're forced into a position to take action where maybe someone else is making you take action, like a liquidator, and you possibly lose everything you've worked so hard for. So my client, like so many businesses that are out there, have uncontrollable debts. When I got in touch with my client to have the harsh reality in the discussion, she was absolutely shocked by the news when I said they were trading insolvent. I can literally still hear in my ears her saying, "What? I pay everything on time. What are you talking about?" And so what I had to then explain next is, and what I'm going to explain to you guys now, is what's the difference between being a solvent business and being insolvent. So for a business to be solvent, the business is paying all their bills, regardless of who it is, what organization it is, they're paying their bills when they're due and payable. So this can range from a supplier invoice is due to when a BAS, any of that. Whereas an insolvent business isn't paying their bills on time when they're due and payable. And once again, that could be the ATO, it could be staff super, it could be creditors, it could be anything that the business owes money to. If you're not paying it when it's due and when it's payable, you could be trading while insolvent. So what I did share with my client was her responsibilities as a director of being a company. And I said that, hey, being insolvent is an absolute massive issue. And it's the number one reason. Let's just go back a few steps. If we go back years ago when this client set up the company, or maybe you set up your own company, the number one reason for setting up a company is essentially to protect your home. It's to protect you from those liabilities of the company or your business that you might face. And if we revisit my client's scenario, if forced in a situation where the amounts that are owed are demanded, the company directors could very well be in a position where the company debt is now personally their own liability because they kept operating the business when that first sign of insolvent trading started happening. So in simple terms, basically, you could not pay the company bills on time as the director or from the funds of the company, so therefore, you traded whilst insolvent. So business owners, for directors, I think for the most part, you're in this dangerous hidden position. And a lot of directors are so oblivious to this, right? But there's no excuse at the end of the day for your responsibilities as a director that you can't trade, you can't operate your business when you're in a position where the business cannot pay its debts, its bills, whatever they are, on time. So the hidden danger, it may, or maybe it's just been forgotten by directors, but the responsibility is on you as directors. And what you're essentially doing is when you are trading whilst insolvent, you're breaching your director's duties. Most business owners, they have no idea that they could become personally liable for company debt. And all they're trying to do is operate a business so that they can pay themselves a nice wage to live and have a great life. But essentially you're operating a business where you're working really hard, got nothing to show for it, and then possibly going to lose everything you have to your own name, even under a company structure. So most business owners, what they don't know, or maybe they've forgotten for whatever reason, but they've forgotten ASIC's expectations of directors, including what their responsibility is as a director. And once again, going back to not trading whilst insolvent. And if I'm going to be absolutely fair, I don't think ASIC is doing a great job at really educating our small business companies that are out there. Anything from no basic education, especially with our company directors who are new on the scene or new in business. And I think the harsh reality is that being in business is tough. And if ASIC, if you're watching this, I think in this space, there's a bit more that you could do to educate your directors on what their responsibilities are. So then they take a little bit more care and responsibility for what's going on as opposed to finding it out the hard way. That's my 2 cents on the topic and we'll move on. Okay, so I've set the reality of how you could be in a position where, you know, you're in financial ruin or could get to that position. But I guess the reality is whilst you understand that you've got this position, if you are in this position, what are your options? So briefly, I want to discuss two options that typically we can look at. So the first is a small business restructure program, and the second is just liquidation. So the small business restructure program, also known as the SBR, is designed primarily for small businesses, right? And I like to call it like a diet version of liquidation. The SBR is ideal for businesses that want to continue trading and retain control of their company. The directors can foresee a future for the business, and they can see that the debts of the company can be negotiated, and ever that agreed new amount in the plan that they're going to pay is paid in full, or it's paid over time based on a plan that the SBR practitioner puts together. There are some basic criteria that you need to be aware of, including that it only includes unsecured debts of the company, and those unsecured debts need to be less than $1 million. Also, employee entitlements like superannuation to be processed and paid. And also very much important is that the director cannot have any disqualifications, and the company or the director, or both, cannot have been previously in or used the SBR or been in a similar liquidation process in the last 7 years. So the benefit of the SBR is that you can continue being in business, you can continue to serve the community and keep your employees in a job. The second alternative that you may want to look at if you're in a position where the debts are too big and you need to do something is, and this is depending on the history of your company, that maybe the only choice you might have is to liquidate the company. While you may fit all the criteria of the SBR, the harsh reality is that the creditors, and in most cases the main creditor is the ATO, that they basically will not vote or accept a small business restructure program for you. So you might be in a position where your company, because of its bad trading history, maybe its bad history with the ATO, with ATO lodgements, and particularly because the major creditor may not be interested in granting the SBR. And so therefore, the SBR plan won't go ahead. So for example, like I said before, if you're years behind in ATO lodgements or recently just caught up in lodgements as well, because you've got that bad history with the ATO as a creditor, the ATO may vote down your SBR plan. So because of that, you don't want to go through setting up the whole small business restructure plan and just get to the end and find that the creditors, in particular the ATO, don't want to accept your plan. And so it's at that point where in that pre-insolvency advice, you might say, hey, the only option really to get myself into a position where I can reset is to go through a liquidation. So a liquidation works in the following way. A liquidator gets appointed by the directors of the company. The liquidator looks at all the assets of the company and then sells whatever assets there are to try and get as much cash in the company whilst the liquidator is in control of that company. Then whatever is left over after paying professional costs, including the liquidator, that money then gets used to pay the creditors. So if a company goes into liquidation and it has $2 million of debts or assets, and the assets could be anything from the directors owing money to the company, it could be the value of the business, it could be maybe plant and equipment. Effectively, what the liquidator is going to most likely do is going to want to sell all those assets and get the cash in, so therefore they can use that cash to pay off the creditors. So in my example, let's say for example a company has $2 million of liabilities, that could be essentially people that it owes money to, and only has $500,000 of assets to sell. So it's likely to be that the creditors would only get around about 25 cents or less repaid to them. A liquidation, can I just assure you, I've been through a few myself, not personally, but representing clients. Liquidations are never fun for anyone. And the interesting part, and I think that every person I've known has gone through a liquidation, is that getting through this whole mindset that you, the director, have appointed the liquidator, but as soon as that liquidator has been appointed, the interesting part is that the liquidator works for the creditors, and it's only about the best interest of what's for the creditors, even though you, the director, appointed them. So if your company has a few things probably just to note, if you've got a director's loan account and you owe the money to, it's a debit loan account, so i.e. you owe the money to the company, that is an asset that the liquidator is going to seek on wanting the director to maybe partially or getting full payment of that loan. And so if you do find yourself in that position, you need to find a way to get that cash. And effectively what the liquidator will do is ask for that cash. So you might want to quickly work out where you're going to get that finance from. You can do that. Or you're going to have to look at what personal assets you have to sell yourself to then give to the liquidator. So you can see it's not a great position to be in. So if we have a look at maybe what assets you've got, if you take no approach to it and you just ignore it all, essentially what would happen is the liquidator can come in at a certain point and just go, I'm going to look at whatever assets you got, I'm going to seize them, I'm going to take them, I'm going to sell them. So that could be anything from like your home, your car, or maybe even your private stamp collection to basically to bring the cash it needs in to then pay the creditors. And let's hope, and this is a really poor joke, that stamp collection is a really good one. I don't know who collects stamps anymore. I'm sure there's someone out there. But let's assume that if you did want to restart your business, there is also an option to do, but it needs to be done by getting a valuation of your business to determine its market value. And what essentially happens is before the liquidator is appointed, we get a market valuation of what the business is worth with a registered valuer. We go through the process of transferring that business into a new company that we set up, and we basically have a sales agreement that's on commercial's arm's length. So basically terms that you would expect from yourself to another person you don't even know. All right, so a stranger. Essentially, so we work out what the business is worth with that proper valuation, and then we transfer the business over by signing a few documents, and it's probably not as simple as that, but we do all that before the point for appointing the liquidator. And that's one thing you can do, that if your debts are so big in your company and you go to liquidation but you still want to operate, is that we can go through that process of resetting a company up, doing a restructure, and transferring that business over. But the important key is there's a lot of things you need to do to make sure that you are not basically putting your new company in a position where you're favoring yourself and not thinking about the creditors that owe money. So that's why we get basically a valuation to see what it's worth. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for you and your family and your business is to shut it down. And that's from a position of being, when you shut it down and going through a liquidation, it can be done really clean and it can be done legally. You want to do it before it takes you down with it. So there's no point going down with the ship, right? You don't have to be like the captain that goes down with the ship. You really want to address where you're at and then have the options and the space and the time to make informed decisions that are not rushed. A liquidation allows that to take place, and you may not be fully absolved from all your debts, but it's a better position to be in by ignoring the growing debts and making the situation worse by ignoring it. So guys, I've seen over the years people hang on till the end, and years too long, and lose their homes, their families, and even suffer from mental health. The mental load of business debt is massive, but there are choices you can make, and you can work with the help by leveling up the playing field and giving yourself that second chance that ultimately you're entitled to. So my final thoughts and comments that I want to share with you are the following. There's no financial plan that works when you're full of anxiety and dread. Imagine what your business and life would be like without the weight of a whole lot of debt. Insolvency isn't a shameful word, it's a reality check, and facing it can be your biggest act of courage. Sometimes you need to stop trying to fix the old business and start building the right one. So guys, if you want help figuring out where your business is and really where it stands, send me a DM with the word reset, and I'll send you my free cash position calculation debt assessment tool, and you can have a look and see where you're at. If you want to, book a 15-minute clarity call with me. Let's just chat and we'll look at where you're at and see if we can figure out your next best step. And that means, even if it means closing the doors of your business. So guys, that's it for today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got some value from it as well. I think it's a valuable topic that we all need to be aware of, and especially whether it's you or a business owner that is struggling with financial debt and they're drowning in debt. This is something that I think is really important to share with them, and they need to hear it. So don't forget to like this episode, don't forget to subscribe, and the reason you want to subscribe is so that when we drop our content, you get it as it drops. So until next time, take control of your money, take control of your business, and I'll see you in the next episode. See you later.